many trainers in years gone by saying it's the only sport where you can legally kill somebody. That's the sort of
crazy.
The responsibility you've got on your hands.
You've created such good relationships with the boxers. They really listen and take every nugget of information that you're giving out to them.
That's the trust element, and really you got to fight for your life in a professional boxing ring.
Charlotte Daly with MailSport Boxing. I'm joined by Barry and Shane in the McGuigan gym. Really appreciate you inviting me in. How are you both doing?
Great, thank you very much.
Yep, good. Finished a long day, but yeah, we've got a few people boxing in big fights soon, so all go ahead.
Yeah, hard work at the moment. Well, before we get stuck into that and, you know, the empire as such that you've built, the McGuigan name and boxing just go hand in hand. I want to start by asking, why boxing? Like, if we go with you first, Barry, why did you decide to get involved in boxing and have that career that you had?
Well, I was pretty decent at soccer, but and I'm not a bad middle distance runner, but I once I put the gloves on, I knew right away that this was something I could be really, mad about, passionate about. And I suppose every young fella wants to be tough, and they want to have a reputation of being able to look after themselves. So that when I got into boxing, I just and I was good at it, and I trained obsessively, and so I mean, it's like it found me. I didn't find it, so it was great. And then I was very fortunate as a kid to get great opportunities, and I won my first national title at 16, and then I went to the Commonwealth Games. I fought for the Ulster seniors at 16 years and 11 months. I knocked out a guy called Shawnee Russell, who was in his late 20s. So I had great power as a young fella, so a youngster. So everything happened early for me,
Just kept going down that path. And for you, Shane, obviously you got into boxing. Was it because of your dad? I know you were a fighter yourself and then transitioned into becoming a trainer. What was the hook for boxing for you?
And every single dinner table we were talking about boxing, since
Couldn't get
Dad
away
was
from
obviously
it.
a world champion at 24, but he retired at 29. So I was only a year old, but he was so heavily involved in boxing when it came to commentating and stuff like that. We were always around the shows, always had fighters, popping in or calling that house phone and stuff like that. So it was quite hard to stay away from it, to be honest. And, by the time I was 13, 14, I started to make my way down to the amateur gym, and did a little bit as an amateur. Won a few fights, few titles here and there, but turned my sights into sort of training, and I was passionate about the process of boxing. I really enjoyed the training and the discipline behind it, and I wanted to channel my mindset onto that, because I felt like there was so much more I could have achieved as an athlete, and that's where my passion for coaching sort of came in. I'm obsessed with trying to get those little edges, as it were, and I think a lot of the time when a fighter not so much doesn't lack talent, but you've got those exceptional talents, and if you get to a decent level at boxing, you'll always see the kids, especially at that 18, 19 years of age, the kids that are really, really talented, they don't have to train as hard. So I was always putting the extra mile in, always trying to look for that little advantage. And I think when it came down to stepping outside of boxing, I still wanted to pursue that as a passion, and then coaching really found me. I feel like Dad started looking after and managing a few fighters, and started training a few, and next thing you know, there's a couple of world champions in there. Then you got David Hay and George Groves knocking down my door to train at the gym, and we've had a whole host of world champions.
Not bad people to be training.
13 years later, I'm still training fighters.
And for you, Barry, with Shane obviously transitioning from fighting himself into training, did you want him to pursue fighting, or did you want him to go into training, or did you want him out of boxing in total?
To be honest, I didn't want any. I've got 3 boys and my daughter, but I didn't want any of them to box, because it's pretty difficult to follow your old man if they're good at athletics or football, and you want to become a footballer. You just live under the microscope. Constantly compared, constantly criticised and ridiculed, and So I didn't want any of them to have that sort of pressure. But so he was down in Millfield at school in Somerset, and he said to me, "Oh, I'm going to the gym tonight." And I said, "What? What gym?" And he said, "I'm going down to," what was the name of the club? Yeovil ABC. I said, "Amateur boxing?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Why are you doing that?" So anyway, he then said, "Oh, well, you wouldn't train me, so I'm going to do it myself." So, and I had sort of said to them, I don't want you to do this. I deliberately don't want you to do it. So anyway, and I said, and then I made my mind up, if he's going to train, I want to be there with him, because I want to make sure that, and I don't mean this in a bad way to any amateur coach, but I don't want him to be trained by an amateur coach who doesn't really know an awful lot. I want to completely commit myself to him, and if we're going to do it, let's do it right. And he won the national novices, he won the Irish under-21s, he won the Ulster seniors, and he was a bit sort of a little bit self-deprecating. He said, "I won a couple of titles." He was a very good amateur, and he could have gone on to be an excellent amateur, but the alternative was to turn pro, and I don't think he ever wanted to turn pro because of that sort of magnetism and always being compared. So and then he took over doing the pats of one of my fighters, and when I came back, they said, "He's really good at it." And from there, "You've lost your job." And I went, "Oh." Well, I was kind of happy to lose my job, because
about 8 years, 7 or 8 years padding me non-stop, and your arms were pretty tired. So. Well,
that's only part of it, but he's meticulous about what he does, and he's got a great support with Josh Pritchard, and he's a great kid, and would have been a world-class fighter, only he failed a brain scan. And so great to have him in there, and he understands our sort of methodology, and it's meticulous, as I mentioned earlier. You only get to the top by working your arse off and really putting everything into it. And as I say, it's where talent meets commitment that decides between good and great. And I think that's the difference with this fella. He knows what it takes, and he's absolutely meticulous with everything he does to make sure that the kids get the best out of themselves, and they understand too. And we've got a great atmosphere in the gym, and CBS is a great leader. Is he our oldest fighter?
Craig's slightly older. Craig's not been in here nearly 7.5 years. I think Chris has been in. So.
But Chris is just a great kid, and the other boxers look up to him, and so the atmosphere is fantastic, and they all work really hard, and we get results.
Before we talk about the gym specifically and those kind of elements you've just touched on there, Barry obviously said about the comparisons to him. What was it like for you, kind of growing up with the McGuigan name and having that over you?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to. I didn't know anything different. Do you know what I mean? I always knew that we'd be walking down the street and people would be going, "Right, Barry," heckling him, and everyone was really nice. Everyone was really lovely. So we got a lot of positivity. But it also, Dad's a people person as well, and he didn't want anyone to have a lasting impression that he was rude, so he would stop and take a lot of time and everything.
Couldn't get anywhere.
I remember most times we would go out, we'd be thinking, okay, we're going to a restaurant. We couldn't just go to a restaurant without someone coming up and asking for a photo, or asking for, back in the day it was autographs, and mainly just a long conversation. So I knew that it wasn't like a normal family. It was a normal kids family, but that's all we knew. But yeah, the pressure was there. I always knew that the pressure was there, and I chose. But the thing is like my brother pursued golf, and as I chose boxing, I knew that it was always going to be a lot of pressure there. So I was expecting it. But turning professional is different, because it's just heightened. And also, it's such a. I feel like people get built up to fall down in the professional ranks, and you see it time and time again. Everyone, and that's the thing. In professional boxing, it's like you got to find your limit. Whereas in the amateurs, you enter a tournament, and if you're good enough, you'll win the tournament. and you might get a good draw and you might get through, and someone else might beat the bogeyman, and then you end up getting through and winning the Olympics or Commonwealth Games or whatever it is. But in the professionals, you can get so sheltered, and this false ego, and then everyone gets on this bandwagon, and that's, I knew that the incentive would have been for me as a famous name to keep winning. And then there would have been this, put him in with this person, put him in with that person. And I knew it was going to be one of those, just, and then if you didn't take the fights, or if you did take the fights and you lost, it was just a bigger fall. So I thought, wait a minute, I've got into this sport 8 years ago because I wanted to see if I could channel my energy into learning a new skill, and I also wanted to see if I could actually handle myself, and I was good at something, which I ended up starting to get pretty good at it. But then I was like, now promoters are coming around and it's getting really serious now, so either I fully commit my whole entire life to this and I become a professional fighter, or I just think, do you know what, I enjoyed the disciplines that it's created within within myself. But I'm still massively immersed in it. But as I said, I really enjoyed the process of training and getting the most out,
getting the best out of people,
getting the best out of something. And I think you've either got fighters like Dad. He was so determined and so talented. And a lot of these fighters I'm working with now, but they need that little gut, they need that little helping hand and someone to look from an outside perspective. And I think I'm pretty good I'm a pretty good people's person. So as being a coach, you have to sort of think on their level and the way they're thinking and what's going through their mindset, rather than just, I did this to get there, that's the right way of doing it. And a lot of fighters that are super successful have that mindset, and that's why I think for me, I was able to transfer into coaching pretty quickly.
That's one of the things that everyone has said today, that attention to detail from you and Josh as well is what sets this gym apart. And Barry, obviously you spoke about the family sort of nature and environment that you've created. Do you think the combination of the two, that you've created such good relationships with the boxers that they really listen and take every nugget of information that you're giving out to them?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the trust element, and really you got to fight for your life in a professional boxing ring. There's some accidents that's happened, unfortunately, and there's lots of people that have either lost their life or they've been really, really seriously damaged. And a lot of the time, if you don't know that individual and they're blinking, or if they don't seem like they're quite themselves, that can be an underlying concussion. Something can be going on internally and you just don't know about it. Now, if you're an egotistical person as a coach and you're just thinking about you and your reputation, you might be leaving that fighter in there too long. And you might not be thinking about what they're feeling and think, or if you're a fighter that's, a former fighter that's just been absolute granite, nails, never been dropped, never been hurt, you don't know what it feels like to be hurt, and this person might have got dropped in the first or second round, it could be the 8th round, and they're blinking, and there's some serious damage there going on internally, and that's when accidents happen. I think for me, I know, I mean, touch wood, we've never had anything bad happen, but I also know that that there's a reason why nothing bad's happened, because we're very in tune with who we're dealing with.
There's a great example of that. I don't know whether I can. Well, we're talking about the 4 episodes, but there's a great example of that in one of the series, where Robbie Davis Jr. is in with a Mexican kid who's a tremendous puncher, and he hits Robbie. And the guys are saying, Rob, we're taking into consideration, because we don't just look, and Josh, and there's a great bit of dialogue in the corner where, and it all happened in a nanosecond. They went, oh, he's gone, he's got, and get the towel. So they had the towel ready to throw in to save Robbie, because... But
we didn't throw it in.
We didn't throw it in.
Because we gave him that... we'd seen...
But you were very apprehensive when he came back to the corner. I remember you looking at him and going... Are you okay? And he was going, yeah.
Because I was gauging whether he was able to get out.
And what I'm saying is that I'm just talking about that actually is a microscopic moment of what you just said, where you're saying, here we are, this happens in literally 10, 15, 20 seconds. You've got to make a judgment. And then you got what you're doing is, because, and this is remember many trainers in years gone by saying it's the only sport where you can legally kill somebody. Yeah. That's the sort of crazy. The responsibility you've got on your hands. So from Shane's perspective, he had to make that call, and Josh was there with him too. He's bouncing off and he's going, do we throw the towel in or not? And then they went, oh, hold on, give him a chance. He get back to the corner, see how his head is, see how much he recovers in that 60 seconds, and then again make another decision. Do we let him out for the last round? Yeah. Was it the penultimate round? Was it a ninth round? Yeah, I
think it was. Yeah.
So, but that, what I'm saying is, he articulated it brilliantly. But it is so important, because these people, these kids are human beings. They're they're very, very important to us.
At the end of the day, nothing. A win is just something that gets written down on paper in history or put on the internet. Really, what the most important thing is, Robbie has a daughter. Do you know what I mean? He's got a family, and I've been involved in fights. George Groves versus Eddie Gutnick. He had 3 children, and he's not able to function. He is permanently damaged for the rest of his life. He's in a wheelchair. That on my conscience as a coach, even my conscience as the fighter that had to go through with that.
As a human being,
I sit there as a father now. It makes you feel horrendous, but at the same time, we're in a sport that, if it's done right and the safety procedures are there, it can be a safe sport.
Yes, but it's super. It's the best sport in the world.
Yeah, but I mean,
no question about it.
You could be driving a Formula 1 car, and next thing you know, someone's tyre comes off and hits in the head, and accidents happen in all sports. Or you go into a rugby scrum, but for us, those coaches are in control of that, whereas as a boxing coach you are. So you have to be very, very, very on it, and you have to be extremely close to that.
And also, as you said a minute ago, the boxer's going to come over to the corner and they're always going to say, I'm fine.
Exactly.
They want to continue, so I guess the onus is on you guys. Yeah. But also on the flip side of that, I saw with Chris Billham-Smith, his fight with Lawrence Okoli, you guys know how to get the best out of your fighter. So there's a bit where he comes over to the corner and you're kind of shouting at him, going, do this for your family, this will set your life up, everything like that. You know what to say to what boxer to get the best out of them. And I guess that comes from the relationship you've developed here.
I mean, 7.5 years, and he's stayed in my house when he started. He couldn't obviously afford rent in London. Rent in London is very expensive. So I said, look, there's a room there for you, and you understand where people come from, Chris is a clever kid. If boxing wasn't for him, he could have done something else, but he also has invested his whole entire life into the process of maximizing himself and becoming a world champion, and that was his biggest moment. Just had a young child as well, and at that stage he was exhausted. Lawrence Okoli was exhausted, and there was 3 minutes left, and he was up on the cards. And really, a lot of people can switch off and think, I'm well up on this cards here, but it's trying to drill in, concentrate now, because you're in there with a 15.5 stone man. By the time he's hydrated, let's try and take your head off. So you've got 3 minutes to change your life, and it was a pretty nice little clip, that one.
You can just see the emotion as well between the two of you in particular. You're not just a boxer and a trainer, you're actually friends. I mean, that must also be quite hard for you to manage and kind of differentiate between, okay, I need to not think about him as my friend here, I need to kind of have my professional cap on at certain points. Is it easy to manage those sorts of relationships within the gym?
Yeah, I think it's quite a funny topic actually, that, because when I started, obviously I was training former 2-weight world champion Carl Frampton, and he was only 10 months older than me. We boxed together in a few amateur tournaments and knew each other very well. Then Luke Campbell was another fighter that I worked with that was just a little bit older than me. David Hay was 8 years older than me. So that was a very different dynamic. But most of the fighters that I worked with, George Groves, born the same year as me, knew him from when we were younger. And Chris, even though he's younger than me, he's still very similar ages. So now we've got got people like Adam Azim that's just 21 years of age. You know, I feel like a granddad. You know, I feel really, really, really old, because he actually, when he was only about 11 years old, we had one of our fighters was sparring, actually Josh Pritchard. The first time we met Josh Pritchard, he was out sparring one of our fighters for a training camp, and Adam was in the gym as a junior. He was only like 11 years of age, so maybe even younger, like 10. So like they look at me a lot more as a senior, and I will have a great relationship and friendship with them. But it's with Chris, it's very different, because I've seen the transformation of him as not just a boxer, as a person. You know, he's got married, he's had a child. He's a great lad, and it is hard to, but I've always managed to get the message across. And there's always a level of, I feel like that's a really, really important, because you can't be everyone's friend. Yeah. And and some relationships, like I trained Josh Taylor, like we were never really close friends, but we had a fantastic working relationship. And I think, the most important thing is that when it's crunch time, there's a level of authority there, and that's what I've always tried to manage that.
Yeah, it's a very
fine line.
It's a very fine line, but it's, the fighters have to understand what they're doing. This is one of the most dangerous sports in the world. I keep saying that, but it's also the most enthralling, most fabulous, most amazing sport, and it's a sport that so many people. When I won the world title in 1985, we only had 4 channels, but 19 million people watched me win the world title. 19 million. So I mean, so what I'm saying is,
globally, it's recognised as one of the biggest sports.
It's one of the biggest. But that was in the UK and Ireland.
I know, but I'm saying even now. I mean, there's sports like, football is obviously a global sport, but rugby isn't recognised in America. It's not really a big sport, whereas boxing is always recognised in a lot of different countries and continents.
But the point I was making was that the fighter has got, when you go to the gym and you put that sort of effort in, they know what's on the line. Yeah. They know how serious it is. And it's a very, very, very serious job. We just talked about with Robbie and whatever, because of the risk. And so knowing that and being pretty nonchalant about it, at the highest level is important, but it's also, it's important to be relaxed, but it's very serious, and you gotta keep that balance. That's all.
Yeah. Well, it's not always serious. We've also seen, especially with you, Barry and Ellie, you love to have a joke. I mean, but she gives it back as good as she gets.
I'm not in the same league as her when it comes to sarcasm, that's for sure. She can stitch me up completely, as she does every time, which is great fun. So I don't mind being the brunt of the jokes. I'm 63 years old, so I got to take a bit of stick, but she's great fun. She's a lovely kid, and she's just. We talk about how serious the business is. It's important to have good fun in the gym, and we have the nice balance of happiness and crack and piss take and then getting down to work, and getting on with it. And so it's that's ambience, whatever you want to call it, in the gym is very important.
I think that's a good point, because that creates longevity. Now, if you dread going to the gym, or back in Dad's day, it was like 8 to 10 weeks of a training camp, and you don't see your friends and you don't see your family. You go to this, Muhammad Ali as well used to go up into the mountains in Big Bear and just lock himself away. And, there's only so much willpower people have, and I think that can create a short career. 100%. And I think what you're finding now is a lot of fighters are going on into their mid to late 30s and they're still performing. You got Artur Beterbiev, who's just 38 or 39 years of age. He's still, even Katie Taylor, she's 37, I think she is, and she's, doing remarkably well, still performing. I think that creates longevity, is having fun and making it enjoyable. And for us, it's like, okay, we might have they might be in the gym for 48 weeks a year, but really only 20 of them are serious weeks, in the sense like, okay, we're really locking in now. There's no fun. Like, there is fun, but we're getting really, really serious.
There's a time and a place,
and there's a time and a place for it, and we're really, putting our head down and working. And that creates longevity in an athlete.
You spoke there about Katie Taylor, and obviously she is one of the big females within boxing. We've got Ellie, her name's up there on the World Champs board at the moment. You've also got Caroline Dubois, who's coming through a star already. Female boxing from back in the day as such to now is just completely different, and the doors that are opening, and we're seeing Ellie coming up with a unification bout and things like that. It's exciting, and obviously you're part of it with them and guiding them on that journey. How has it been with the likes of Ellie and the likes of Caroline?
It's great. I mean, from a coach's perspective, it's a different energy system because there's 10 2-minute rounds. So, there's a 2-to-1 work-rest ratio, whereas with the male 12-3s, there's a 3-to-1. So, it's a different, it gets me a bit more creative when it comes to their training and how to structure not just their boxing. It's more technical and sparring and stuff, but when it comes to their conditioning aspects and also, guys can drop weight a lot quicker, and girls might hold on to the weight a little bit longer. So it's for me, from a challenge perspective, I actually really, really enjoy it. And it's equally as technical, equally as rewarding. And I think Ellie and Caroline are both great for boxing, not just female boxing, they're great for boxing. I believe that they're both gonna, Caroline in the doco obviously has developed, and when she was fighting then she was only doing 6 rounders. Now she's just won the IBO world title, and she's about to fight for the main 4 belts. So this next year in her career is going to be massive. And as you just mentioned, Ellie's just in her first unification bout. So
it's very exciting times.
I feel like the documentary, they got such great, they got everyone at such different stages of their career. It would be great to maybe do at some stage you could do a follow-up. Because you just see where everyone's career's gone.
Exactly. And can I just add to that? And Shane he's never been like me in the sense that he's much more sensible than me, and I tend to sort of go over the top sometimes. I'll admit it myself, but I have to tell you, we both think Caroline Dubois is one of the big superstars in the future. Ellie is a fabulous talent, and she's going to win a unified title, and she's definitely going to jump up to featherweight and win it with a featherweight and possibly even a super featherweight. But Caroline Dubois is in a very exciting division because we got Katie Taylor and we've got Chantel Cameron, who used to be with us many years ago, and I believe she can beat both of those, and she can step up to light welterweight as well, and she's a terrific puncher, and I genuinely think she's going to be, I'm sure you agree, she's going to be a superstar in the future.
Well, with that's what I was going to ask, that I've spoken to Caroline multiple times, and even a long time ago she was telling me that she wanted Katie Taylor, she wanted Chantel Cameron, she was talking about Michaela Mayer, even referencing Clarissa Shields. Like, she is confident and ready to go. But with her and with the likes of Adam Azim, how important is it to manage their career? Because you don't want to throw them into the deep end straight away, and then that's when they could sink. How important is it?
I think from a technical standpoint, both of them feel like they're more than capable and more than ready to win those fights. Adam, I mean, he's now up to 12 round fights, but even at a early stage in his career, he's so technically sound and he's so athletic, and so is Caroline, both very technically sound, and obviously working with myself, we've increased their punch power. We've also got them even more technically sound, so that's why they're keen to call out the big names, because they don't just want to be a British champion, they want to be a generational talent. They want to be one of those fighters that you can go down in history as an icon, and I think both of them have huge expectations. As Dad said, it's about managing their talent, because it's not necessarily about managing their expectation, because it's not necessarily about the talent. It's about, you can't fight those people overnight. You have to build yourself up, because why would somebody like Katie Taylor now Caroline is in a position that Katie Taylor has to recognise her. But at the start, calling out somebody's name. But that just shows you where she knew she was getting. That's
where she was aiming.
She was going
had the
there
vision and chased it.
And beyond. You know, and she even joked about boxing Clarissa Shields, who's a middleweight. You know, but she's like, that's where her sights are set. So
that's a good sign.
Yeah, she wants the big fights.
And the other thing is, I mean, for example, Adam Azim, Eddie Hearn has been recently sort of calling him out to box Dalton Smith. But he knows we're not idiots, and this is what I'd like to think we're experts at, developing talent and knowing when to match him. We've absolutely no doubt in our mind that he'll beat Dalton Smith. But there's a time to do it. And just because Eddie wants to be cheeky doesn't mean that we're going to go and say, oh yeah, no, just to satisfy you, we'll put the fight on now. Different fighters need different times when they make those ultimate fights. And that's what he is, because
you only get one crack at it.
Yeah.
Unless it's an unbelievable fight like Gatti Ward, then you want to see it 3 times.
Yeah.
But if it's an okay fight, and if it's a technical fight and one person is superior, you say, oh, bit of a I mean, if Manny Pacquiao versus Floyd Mayweather was when they both were 10 fights in, and that same fight happened, people would go, we don't want to see that again. But the fact that one's an 8-weight world champion, the other one's a 7-weight world champion, and they were both superstars in their own right. One made 330 million and the other one was about 150 million. That's about making sure you maximize the right time and when to box. And these fighters would do it. They do it every day in the gym. They get in there and they spar, and it doesn't matter who you tell them who they're sparring. They go, cool, not a problem, I'm sparring at 11 o'clock. Get in there and they do it. And it's not about that. It's not about the opponent. It's about financially when it makes sense, and also when the credibility is there. Whether it's for world titles or whether it's for big big endorsements coming in, and they're then pushed as a main face, and it's like, okay, now it makes sense.
But it's also, there are times that you need to take chances, and but that has to be worth it financially, and from a career point of view as well. For example, we put Josh Taylor in for the Commonwealth title. Who was the guy?
No, he boxed Howard Davies, didn't he?
Howard Davies,
which was quite a 50-50 fight at the time. And
well, Shane looked at him and I looked at him and I said, what do you think? And he said, yeah, let's take it. And most other people would say, oh no, and he just knocked out somebody, and we thought, no, Taylor would go through him.
But that was a we knew that Howard Davies wasn't going to get to that level, right? So I genuinely believe Dalton Smith will get to the top, and I think Adam Azim will get to the top, and why not let that brew?
And then at the top,
you've seen it a million times where guys fight too early, and it spoils one of the fighters. The time to do it is when they're both in the prime of their careers, when they're both earning a lot of money, and there's a lot of money on the line for them.
There's a huge demand and a huge interest. Right now, the demand is on Tyson Fury versus AJ, or Tyson Fury versus Usyk. There's where if you walk down the street and you had casual boxing fans, so what fights do you want to see?
They're the ones I'd say.
Right? Back in the day, what fights do you want to see? Do you want to see Khan Brook? Yeah, I want to see Khan Brook. Do you know what I mean? Those are the fights that people want to see. And I think they're not there yet in that sense. Like, if you go down and say, who do you want to see? Adam Azim? Well, I don't know, he's quite a good kid. But him and Dalton Smith isn't on people's tongues yet. And Eddie's trying to put that on it too early because he's desperate for a big fight for his platform, which is his own.
Well, I could talk to you guys all day, but I'm just going to finish with Chris's fight with Richard Riakporhe, because it's one I'm really excited about. Haven't actually got a date for it yet, but it's in the pipeline. What makes you guys so confident that Chris can kind of right that wrong from 2019, I think it was, when Richard
July
got one 21st.
over on him? Because I know that first fight wasn't, from our perspective, wasn't good preparations. It was my sister sadly passed away, but she was in very, very critical conditions before that fight. So we had a torrid training camp, and Chris lost on a split decision. And I genuinely believe that...
I thought he won it.
I thought he won it, but it was also a 10-rounder, and if it had been 12, I thought Chris didn't get into his flow early. They've both improved, but Chris wants to avenge his loss. I want him to avenge the loss. I want to make sure that he has a proper, great build-up and a great training camp, and right the wrong. Yeah. And as frustrating as it is for us to see Richard react, or just sit back and call people's names out and not take any risks. And I genuinely believe he's a good talent, he's a good fighter, but he doesn't take any risks, and he doesn't create much attention in the sense, like, you know, he doesn't sell tickets, and he's just quite happy to wait his turn. And I think it's a bit of a, you know, Chris has always been the person that's gone, I'll take Lawrence Okoli. No one wants to box him, I'll take him.
Yeah.
You know, I'll take Masterneck. Nobody in Masternek's 15 years or 16 years as a professional has given him a voluntary for a world title, because everyone looks at him and thinks, that's a handful. There's no point. I've got another 14 guys in the top 15 that I can choose, and I definitely don't need that guy. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we gave him his opportunity, and Chris didn't box the best. But I think there's so many things that
all he needed was another 3 minutes. He would have knocked him.
Yeah, exactly. But
definitely, he'd already punctured the body.
We need a big fight. Sky Sports love a British rivalry, and I think it's got all of the ingredients, and you know, and we're really looking forward to it.
Yeah.